Hello, thanks very much for having a look at our recording of our Year 11 Revision Forum. We've done this for a few years now and the feedback's always been really positive, so I am hopeful that what you're going to hear in this recording is useful, otherwise people are just being really polite. My name's Yvonne Norden, and I'm just going to share with you some useful strategies for how you can best support your Year 11 student in the next few months in the run-up to their GCSEs. And I think it's worth saying that without revision, to start off with, we forget. There's a famous study, and you might have heard of it before. It's the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve that you can see on the screen there. And the idea is that when we learn something, if we learn it, when we learn it for the first time, really quickly we start to lose that information. So you can see from the graph, after 20 minutes, we've lost 42% of it. After an hour, we've only got 44% of it left. After a day, there's only a third left, and after 6 days, it's only 25%. So all of that information that your child is learning on a daily basis in school, without revision, naturally we forget, and they won't be retaining all of it. The most popular technique for revision is highlighting, rereading and highlighting. And this has been the findings of a survey at university level, talking to students, so students who've been successful at school, at GCSE, at A level, and then as undergraduates, and saying to them, how do you revise? And they've said, we reread our notes and we highlight them. The problem is, this isn't a very effective revision strategy, and I'm going to just explain why before I share with you some examples of things that do work and that will make a bigger difference. One of the issues with the rereading and the highlighting, it's really time consuming, and it can lead to overconfidence because students feel like they're really busy. Look at all this revision I've done, I've reread all of this, I've highlighted it all, so they feel really they feel like they've been really productive, and actually that feeling's really important for them at this time because it makes them feel like they're in control. But what they're actually doing is spending a lot of time on something that isn't helping them to learn things in the longer term. And sometimes they end up focusing on how pretty it is and how neat it is and how, you know, the full array of pastel highlighters that are available out there. They end up focusing on that instead of the substance that they're actually revising and learning. So it takes a lot of time, makes them feel busy. The problem is as well, it's far too easy, because for learning to actually happen, there needs to be real engagement in thinking and thinking hard. So to commit something to longer term memory or to genuinely understand something at a deeper level, there has to be real cognitive engagement, there has to be proper thinking, and highlighting stuff is really superficial. Like I said earlier, it can lead to overconfidence, which is really dangerous because what you don't want is your child thinking, well, I've revised all of this, you know, look at my science revision guide, it's all highlighted, I know it all, and then they go and sit in that exam hall in June and open the paper and go, oh, actually, I don't know any of this. So that overconfidence is really dangerous, because the moment where they will realise that it's not worked is when it's too late. And the reason that it can lead to that overconfidence is because recognising understanding at a more superficial level is not the same as memorising and learning something at a deeper level. So if I have a book in front of me now and that I've read, then I'm engaging with it, I understand it, and I recognise the information that's in there. But if you take that book from me and say, right, tell me what it said, I won't be able to retain it in the same detail. So by having the notes in front of your child, they will they'll think they know something better than they actually do. And like I say, that can only lead to disappointment. And I wouldn't want any year 11 or any student in any year to experience that feeling of realising that they don't know something and it being too late to do anything about it. So that said, you know what doesn't work? What I'm going to focus on in this session is how to revise, what to revise, and how you can support your year 11 child in the run up to their exams. I showed you this before, so without revision we forget. However, there is a positive to this, or there is a hope to this, because with revision we remember. So this is part of the same study, and what was found was that every time something is studied or repeated, more of it is retained. So when you look at the graph, you can see the drop that happens after the first learning of it, so goes down to you know, mid-50s. It's revised, then the forgetting starts again, but it doesn't, they don't lose as much. It goes down to 70% instead of all the way down to the 50s. They revise again, the next time they're retaining more like 80%, and you can see by the 4th repetition they're holding 90%. By the 5th repetition, and you can see there's time scales on the bottom there, which is helpful in terms of your year 11 planning their revision. By the 5th repetition, within a 3-month span, they will retain nearly all of it, right? And we've got 3 months, we've got more than 3 months, so that's doable, okay? And the best way to practice revision, it's about retrieval. And I've explained this to year 11, and what I say to them, if I ask you to retrieve something, I'm asking you to go and get it. So retrieval practice is the act of going and finding something in your memory. So trying to remember something, and the more that is done, the more easily something is retrievable in the longer term. It's far more active than rereading your notes and highlighting, which, as we've just seen, isn't going to help. And actually that practice, that act of practicing retrieval from your memory, means that you will remember that information in the longer term. And you saw that graph that showed by repeating, you know, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, your retention, the level of retention of that information increases massively. So these are some strategies. So the idea, the key thing is that it's retrieval from memory. Okay, so telling your child to put their notes away, or if they've spent some time reading over something, then put them away, and they need to write down what they can remember. And they need something specific to work on there, you know, not just write down all the history you can remember, because that's huge, but write down everything you can remember about the poem Remains. Do your medicine through time, like a timeline, and what were the key, you know, the key events, the key factors and the key effects. Write down everything you can remember about a geography case study that you need to know. Draw a plant cell. So quite specific bits of knowledge, but get them to try and do it from memory. And this advice, I should have said actually that this, the little graphic that you can see on the screen there, is from an organisation called the Learning Scientists. So this is their advice based on their research and their findings. So one of the first ones is actually practice retrieving, practice from memory. One of the good ways of practicing is to do practice tests, practice questions, particularly around subjects. You know, I'm thinking about your maths, your science, any subject, to be honest with you, but practicing applying in a test, in a question. Now it does say on there you could make your own. Students can, and for things like, you know, the English literature questions, it could be on any of the poems, so they could make up their own poetry questions. But there are enough past papers now kicking around that there are, you know, there's more questions than they could possibly ever answer as part of their revision. And there's a nice suggestion there about, you know, students working together, both of them doing the same test, and then comparing and working together on the gaps. Flashcards is a strategy that can be really helpful. So I'll give you an example of in Spanish. So if they're trying to learn Spanish vocabulary, they could put the English on one side, the Spanish on the other. And the first time they use them, they could start with start with the Spanish and translate to English, and then make it harder, start with the English and translate to Spanish, and do that. Now there's a little bit of a warning on that slide there, because sometimes students, and it kind of goes back to the highlighting thing, they focus on the bit that makes them feel busy, and making the flashcards makes them feel busy. And again, they can make them beautiful, they can put nice headings on them, you know, where they do the highlighter and the pen, the Sharpie at the same time, to make a really nice heading on that flashcard. Making them can take ages, but that's not the bit that helps, it's the using them. So they can make their own. There are some that you can buy, so you can see there's an example on there from CGP. They make a lot of the study guides, so the little revision cards that they make support those, and they've got quiz questions and things on them, as well as keywords. so they can buy their own. You can get them from websites like Quizlet, where people have made them and shared them. So that can be a shortcut to actually making them, because the making them isn't the important bit, the using them is. And that's an example of where you can help, because I know you really want to, and you want to know how you can support your child with their revision. If they say, right, I've been studying this, I think I know this stuff, test them with the flashcards. Now that pile of flashcards is going to get quite big across all their different subjects. So this next little piece of advice is a way to help prioritise. Sometimes students will spend more time revising things that they already know. And if you think about it, it's understandable, because they're reading something, they understand it, they know what they're doing, and it makes them feel good. Because if revising something that you don't know exposes that feeling of a lack of confidence, or and feeling a bit vulnerable about it, so you can understand why a student might spend time on the things that they already know, because it makes them feel better. And that's a short-term thing. When they're in that exam room and open the paper and see a question on the stuff that they don't know, then that's obviously not going to work out for them. So this is a way to help your child spend time on the things that they don't know. And it's a way of just sorting those flashcards. So the idea would be you'd have 3 piles. They're represented by boxes on the screen, but you could just use an envelope or just an elastic band around the cards to group them. And the idea is that the daily ones are the ones that they're the least confident with, and they will look at those every day. The ones in the Tuesday and Thursday box, or whichever days of the week they want to do it. If it's football practice on a Tuesday night, make it a different night for the flashcards. You identify 2 days of the week that they're going to look at those ones, and those are the ones that they're more confident with, because they're only going to look at those 2 out of 7 days. And then the final box, which is labelled Friday on here, again, you and your child could change the day to fit what you're doing. That's the pile that they are most confident with, because they're only looking at those 1 day a week. So the idea is you start with all of the cards in the daily box, and as your Year 11 child is getting them right, you promote them, you move them up the boxes or envelopes or packs or whatever to the Tuesday, Thursday pile, so that they're reviewed less frequently. If they then get them right there, you would promote them again to the Friday or once a week pile. More importantly as well though, as well as promoting, you demote the ones that they're getting wrong. So if you've got some in the Friday box that they aren't getting consistently, drop them down so that they're seen more frequently in the Tuesday, Thursday pile. If they're getting them wrong there, then you can drop them to the daily box as well. So the idea is that they will be spending more time on the ones that they don't know, which is obviously going to lead to better revision. Whichever of those different strategies that you use, whether it's the write down everything you can remember, the flashcards, or including the promoting and demoting up the boxes to determine how frequently you look at them, this next step is really important. So whenever you're doing any sort of retrieval practice, it only works if students then go back to their class notes afterwards and check for accuracy, to fill in any gaps, to fix any mistakes or misconceptions. And actually that idea of looking at something and going, right, I got that wrong, and going through the act of fixing it will help them to learn it in the long run. They're more likely to remember it the next time. The other reason it's really important is if you've done a task like draw plant cell, if there isn't that process of going back and checking, what if some of those labels are wrong, and that then becomes what they've looked at, and that then becomes what their long-term memory of that thing is. So it could lead to learning mistakes, which, when they're trying to revise and doing their very best with it, the last thing you want is them actually remembering things that are wrong. So the going back and fixing things is really important. And like I said, correcting something will support them remembering it in the long run. Just something to be wary of with all of those retrieval tasks as well is that they need to be careful not to make them too easy, and recognise that what they're asked to do in an exam is more than just remember, a particular quotation, for example. and you know, if they do have to, in science, remember, be able to label a plant cell, do they also have to be able to explain the function of those different parts? And if they do, they need to revise that as well. And like it says on there, and this is an example from English, which I can talk to you more confidently about, you know, we give students a bank of quotations to learn, and we make sure that if they know those quotations, they have got a bank of quotations that would cover any question. But learning those quotations on their own is not enough. They need to know what they mean, where they're from, what themes do they link to, what methods has the writer used, how does that then link to the writer's ideas and what they were trying to say and their purpose in that piece of writing. So it's just making sure that by simplifying something to a flashcard or a mind map or something that's part of a memory revision strategy, that we don't oversimplify it and strip out the challenge that's going to actually test them in the exam as well. The example that's on there as well would be from maths. So your child might spend a lot of time sitting practicing Pythagoras questions one after the other and be able to do that and think, great, I know how to do it. But when they then sit with an exam paper, they can't recognise that that's a question that they should use Pythagoras in, because it won't necessarily tell them. They have to select, you know, identify the appropriate method for working something out. So it's just making sure that we don't strip out the challenge and make it too easy when doing our revision. This is kind of a longer term strategy in terms of all those different things that we've talked about. It's really important to spread them out. It's never too early to start revising. I would recommend revising now, starting that revision now, and it being little and often. Like it says on there, a little bit of time each day. 5 hours spread over 2 weeks is far more effective than 5 hours all at once crammed the day before an exam, which won't work. So little and often works, and it also, I think students feel like things are under control. They don't feel as stressed. They know that they're getting the hours in their revision, and that can only be helpful for them and their mental health. So get started, little and often makes a difference. Avoiding those crammings, because it doesn't help. If you think back to that forgetting curve that I showed you, and I said that each repetition meant that more of something was retained, and that graph had 5 repetitions in the space of 3 months. You know, we're in February now, early February, so we are, you know, 3 and a bit months away from those exams starting. So what I would advise is that students plan their topics. And, you know, let's say topic 1 is the poem remains. If they're going to revise that next week on Monday, then they need to make sure that they're then coming back to that in a few weeks' time and building in those repetitions so that they see it often, and get to the point that they've revised it a number of times before they sit down to do that literature exam. So spacing out the different topics, that also supports revision and retention. Making sure as well that there is balance. So yes, that's spaced practice. So doing some revision, having some you know, quality night's sleep, healthy diet, exercise, socialising, time with family. All of that is part of the bigger balanced picture of revision. And by starting now, it makes it possible to keep all of those things that together make a healthy lifestyle, rather than avoiding it, pretending it doesn't exist, that the exams are miles away, and then getting to the point where it's stressful and then unhealthily a focus. So a little bit now, starting now, will make a difference. I wanted to share some resources to help. So that's the how to revise. This is the what to revise, and where you can go to do some different revision. The first one that I wanted to share was Seneca. Now Seneca, I've done a screenshot of the homepage of it there. Seneca is a free learning platform. There is a paid subscription part of it. I'm not promoting that at all. I think there's more than enough on the free bit. And where we direct students to use this as a resource as part of revision, we direct them to the free bit. They don't need to be paying for anything on this. Seneca is it incorporates all of the things that I've just talked about in terms of good practice around revision. So it's based on retrieval. I'll show you an example of what it looks like in a second. It gives students information and it then quizzes, it tests them on it straight away. It supports information being broken down into chunks over long periods of time, so you can revise this topic now, but then that topic next week, that topic the week after, and it keeps a track on what they're doing. And it also uses imagery to support the revision. So there are pictures that go alongside the bits of information, and sometimes that visual cue is useful and will help a student to remember something more easily than if it was just text. Here's an example of one of the courses. So this is biology, as in the triple science biology, AQA GCSE Foundation. Now I've deliberately picked this one because there are different options available. So there's biology, but there's biology combined science as well. So you need to make sure they're choosing the right course. This is AQA. There are other exam boards that offer science, so you need to make sure that that they're revising the one that fits them, because some of the content is different. You can find out which exam board your child is doing once they get their personalised revision time, exam timetables in March. That will have the exam board on there, but it's also on our school website. It tells you which board we use for which qualifications. This is also a subject that has tiers, so there's foundation and higher, and that's the case for science, maths and Spanish. So do make sure that they're looking at the right bit, because again the content is different. So you find the course that you want. You can see in the background there that there's different courses. Those purple ones that say premium in the corner, those are the ones that you pay for. Don't use those, just use the free ones. They're fine. They're more than good enough for what you need. When you click into the course, this helps you with that overview of what the course is. Down the left hand side there's basically a checklist of all the topics. So you'd start with, in this example, it's part of cells, what's in cells, types of cells. You click start learning and you see this. So it's kind of like a digital textbook to a point, but it's more interactive than that. So it will put information up on the screen, so you can see the little explanation. The little arrow at the side of the image tells you that they need to go through a couple of different text boxes to see the full amount of information. You can see in the bottom right hand corner there's a typing speed that's on there, and that's because the text appears on the screen as if it's being typed. Some students hate that and don't want it to do it and just want it to pop up all at once. So you can see there's an off button there. Sometimes though, and I think that the advantage to it, because I don't like it, but what it does make you do is it makes you read it more slowly, and therefore it makes you read it more carefully. So if your child is saying, well, I'm switching that off, it's on the screen, I've read it in 2 seconds, I'm moving on to the questions, they haven't read it. So I would advise to keep the reading on, the typing on, if they are likely to skim read it and not read it properly. So it forces them to read it carefully. Once they have read it, they click continue, and that's where it gives you a task. So this task is designed to test the understanding and retrieval of what's just been done. So there's the little sliders there to say whether something's true or false. And once they're all correct, it lets you move on. And then there's another example where there's a fill in the gap, and if students get it wrong, it corrects it. So it's that you know, what we said earlier about making sure that work is checked so that misconceptions aren't learned. Something else that's available to help is on Firefly, and I shared the details of these in a letter. There are subject checklists. This is for all exam content, so not coursework. So there isn't anything for art, because that's all what you call NEA, non-exam assessment, or photography. And there's nothing for, say, the practical of PE or the DT non-exam assessment folder. But what there is for all of the exam content for every subject that we offer, there is a checklist. Because if we're saying to students and to you, right, they need to revise and they need to space the topics out, well, your starting point needs to be, well, where's my list of what I need to cover? If your child's got to structure all of this and make sure they're spending time on the stuff that they don't know, you need a bit of a to-do list. So these are taken directly from the specifications. You can see there that the biology one that's on there, the topic list, is very similar to the one on Seneca, and that's because both this document and the Seneca setup have used the specification from the exam board as the starting point, so they will cross-reference and they will work together. So there's a one for biology, and there's a one for computer science, and there's a one for the exam component of DT, not the coursework, like I said. And how I would recommend students use those is that they go through those, and you can see the columns that say they've got the RAG rating, so red, amber, green. The stuff that they feel confident with, green. Things that they understand but can't remember, amber, and the things that they haven't got a clue about, red. And that should help them prioritise which topics are they going to look at more often. So get them to put the red topics on their timetable more frequently. The green stuff, yes, look at it, because you don't want to make an assumption that then it becomes insecure, but use that as a way to help prioritise and identify what students need. So yeah, like I've just said on there, use them to check their confidence, and then use them to help plan that revision timetable. There are some subject resources as well. I am going to be slightly biased and share an English resource at this point. Students have all been given a homework and revision booklet, and there are lots and lots of different tasks in there. Staff will set them as homeworks, but we've also said to students, use it to manage your own revision. They were really clear when we spoke to students about what would be helpful, that they did not want lots of videos to watch. I think they think that because they're the TikTok generation, that's what they want all the time. And they said, actually, no, that's their social time. That's a spare time thing. They want to learn by practicing exam questions and doing it in that kind of more traditional way. So here's an example of what's been put together for them. The bottom part, from where it says skills and practice task, that's an exam question straight from a past paper. To support them in being able to tackle that, we've put some QR codes at the top which will take them to resources that will help them. So you can see on the right hand side, one of them is Seneca. So this task, if you look at the top, is based on Jekyll and Hyde, and it's about the character of Hyde and how he's used to create fear. The Seneca tasks that are on there are specific to Hyde and fear. It's not just all Seneca tasks on Jekyll and Hyde, it's specific to ones that will be relevant to the question. The quotation learning, again, it'll take them to Firefly, where there are slides of key quotations relating to Jekyll and Hyde, and I think there's 21 key quotations that we think they should know across the whole novel that will help them to answer any question. And then the mini plan and thesis statement one, because that's the task we've asked them to do underneath, not to write the exam answer but plan it, because that planning, the thought process, is useful revision. They can write some of them up and might be asked to do some of them, but they don't need to do them all. That's really time consuming. The revision that is most effective is the planning. So that mini plan and thesis statement QR code at the top will take them to videos where we taught them through how to do it, and more like generic advice. So that's an example of a resource that's available, and that it's on Firefly, but your child has a hard copy of that booklet as well, that they will have been given. Revision timetables, the template for this is available on Firefly if students wanted to do a paper copy of it. I've seen some students in the past who've made their own little Excel calendars where they've planned everything out and made sure they cover every topic however many times. However you and your child wants to organise it is up to you. What I would offer though is, if your child works best in school and finds it harder to work at home, because home's home and home can be, is more about relaxing or socialising, if they find it easier to work in school because it's school, they are very welcome to stay in school and do an hour's revision after school. They would be supervised by the learning mentor between 3:15 and 4:15. There are revision activities happening in some subjects on different nights of the week. So I know there's maths happening, I know there's humanities happening, DT, different subjects offering different things at different times in the run up to the exams. But if they just want to sit and do their own revision, that's an offer that's there for them. They just need to sign in at Student Services, and then they can sit and get on with that in that structured environment, if that helps. Right, this last part, so we've done how to revise, we've done what to revise. This is now the how to support students and looking after students, because it can be a stressful time for them, and that can make it a stressful time for you. Stress isn't always a bad thing. There is a point, you can see on the right hand side, where it becomes a bad thing, and that's where that stress becomes overwhelming. But there is a little zone where stress is a motivator, and stress is positive stress. It gives them that impetus to work, to be motivated. So a little bit of stress isn't a bad thing. Some students are indifferent to stress. That can be quite a stressful thing for you to experience as well, if you feel that your child just isn't aware that the exams are coming, or that they're not particularly motivated to work towards them. So they might appear to just float along carefree, not affected by stress in either a good or a bad way. So students react differently, but stress on its own can mean different things. It can be good, some are indifferent, it can be negative. There are some signs of stress for you to look at, to look out for. So some physical signs, dizziness, feeling a bit faint, feeling a bit wobbly, sweating, heart racing, that churning stomach, feeling sick, jelly or wobbly legs. Some of them might talk about going blank, that when they go into an exam they go blank, or that they can't concentrate, or they might have overly negative thoughts about how something's gone in the past. Well, I failed my mock, or I can't do that. And that negative kind of talk that they're giving themselves starts to become very dominant in their heads. It might affect them emotionally. They might feel a lot of tension or feel panicked, and feel overwhelmed, and a lot of that comes down to feeling like they're not in control. I think year 11 feels like it goes really, really quickly, and that can make them feel like it's all just rushing by and they don't have control over that. If your child is experiencing some of those physical reactions, so the fast breathing, the feeling sick, there's some information on there that might be useful to talk to them about, so that they can try and bring that under control, because sometimes panic breeds panic. They start to panic that they're panicking, and their breathing speeds up even more, and that can be overwhelming for them. So there's just some tips on there for how to slow breathing down, and you can just talk them through how to do that, and they can learn how to bring that under control and to diffuse that sense of panic. In terms of feeling more confident about exams, some of them will have some quite negative thoughts about it, and they're just worrying and they can't help it, and telling them not to worry sometimes makes it worse, because then they're thinking, well, why aren't you worrying? Because I'm worrying, and if you're not worrying, that makes me more worried. But if they're talking about things like, if I fail my GCSEs, my whole life will be a fail, that overstated, which we know isn't true, then try to spin those around and focus on the positive instead. So it says on there about being, if their negative belief is I'm rubbish at maths, then try to talk to them about, well, look, you might never be the best person in the world at maths, but you can be better than you currently are, and you can do better than what your mock was, or you've already got better than what your mock was. It's just trying to put things into perspective for them, and they need a bit of help with that sometimes. That lack of control, one of the best things that can give them that sense of control is a revision plan. So breaking everything down into topics, that's where those lists come in, where the Seneca topic menus come in. Breaking it down, setting a time limit, because if you set a time limit where you say, right, you're doing 90 minutes of revision this afternoon, then once that 90 minutes is done, they're done, and they're then not thinking I should be revising. Whereas if it's open-ended, they might do an hour and think, well, that's not enough, I could do more, or they might think, actually I'm having, if you say, right, you're having some time off, it stops them spending that whole time off thinking, well, I should be revising. So it's a bit healthier in that sense. And then checking the progress, checking how they're doing, Set a time limit if needed, and if they meet a target, set a new one. And sometimes they just need a bit of help. They can squirrel away and try and revise on their own. Sometimes getting them to do it downstairs, not in the room, can be helpful, so that you can chip in and help and just keep an eye on them as well. There are some little tips on there about how to manage your workspace, how to manage your time, and a lot of it summarises what I've already said. So the bit on the left with the little bike, about making sure that there is time for a break, going for a walk. You know, if your child has sat and done some revision, make them come and walk the dog with you if you're going out to do it. Make them have those little breaks. Using those practical memory aids, flashcards, mind maps, as well as reading and writing notes. The writing should be ideally from memory and then check-in. Using a calendar, keep an eye on deadlines if they know they've got NEA coming up, coursework deadlines, so that they know really clearly when the different exams are, so that they can, you know, if they know which is their first exam and which is their last one, then obviously they're going to manage their time around those subjects in different ways. Keeping their phone and social media away while they're revising. I can't work with my phone next to me. It's a distraction. If it makes a noise, I want to look at it. So put it away. Get them to put their phone away while they're doing that, and then look at it when they're having a break. Having a clutter-free space, just so that it's not distracting and so that they feel like it's purposeful. And having that revision plan, like it says in the bottom right corner, so that they can see what they're planning to do and what they've achieved. You know, a to-do list with things that you can tick off is a really nice motivator. If they are a bit stressed about their exams and feeling worried, reminding them that that is a normal reaction and that is understandable. And reminding them to talk to us, they should talk to the teachers. We will help and we can do things, and sometimes just talking it through is enough, but we can offer them some support. Sometimes revision can be quite a lonely experience, so getting them to explain things to you or a friend or another family member. This is where older siblings can really come in useful, especially if they just did the exams a year or two ago themselves. Can they help them with a bit of revision? And if there isn't a person to hand, get them to tell the dog, but just that make it more a less lonely experience, I suppose. Testing themselves and checking them so that they know that they're accurate. There's a bit there about building in some rewards. I think the image there is suggesting it should be a biscuit, but whatever works, and making sure they're getting plenty of sleep. Their memory will work better if they are well rested, and cramming and not sleeping will be destructive rather than constructive around their exam performance. If you do have any questions, or if you feel like you need a bit more information or some more support, please do get in touch with us and we will do whatever we can to support you and your child in the run up to their exams. Thank you in advance for your support. It does make a massive difference, and we know this is a difficult time for you as well as for them, but we'll work together and we'll help them, and it will all be over soon, and they will celebrate with their prom and then those exam results in the summer. Thank you very much, and like I said, please do get in touch if there's anything that we can do. Thanks.